All right. Good morning, all. I think it should be fine, but this time I'm prepared to check it faster. There we go. There we go. Our typical ritual: checking the sound, checking the video. It works. Okay, everything is working. Um, that was fast. What should we start with? Let's start with the poll information. Good morning, Mr. IK. Let's start with the poll results. So far, it's not over yet, but we are still voting on naming. So I opened up the Ghost Ecosystem nomenclature article, and what we're trying to vote for is the naming of the tokens on the testnet. So the polls are taking place on Telegram, Twitter, and Discord. Then they're going to be accumulated together. And then, based on the majority vote plus some thought process, we'll try to make a decision. But it seems like we are all in favor of, as a majority, in favor of E Casper, S Casper, Casper, and P Casper, therefore, nomenclature on the testnets. And that's pretty much what the poll was about. We also need to figure out what's going to be the name of the UniV2 token once when we deploy Uniswap on chains that don't have it. But overall, it seems like we will have two parallel universes, as some of the whales described it pretty well, where we have a mainnet universe. Mainnet universe is very straightforward. E ghost, S ghost, ghost, P ghost, boom, that's all great. GNV just converts into P ghost, therefore. So all very straightforward there. And on the testnet, instead of, since the testnet is going to be called Casper, we have a totally different universe of E Casper, S Casper, Casper, P Casper, and so on and so forth. So there's no GMV for the testnet. So yeah, so that's pretty much what we have. Um, the poll was a close tie, but as we all know, some people just vote without realizing what they vote for. Some people vote realizing what they vote for. So it's, you know, it's still good to know where people stand. Uh, Unfortunately, nobody really went with Fatso Stinky, although that could have been a pretty meme type of story. So what's going to happen is, I think by probably Wednesday of this upcoming week, we'll be making that decision. And the smart contracts will still retain Fatso and Stinky as legacy names uh, on the function level, but we'll then add a naming module essentially. And before deploying Ghost DAO on a testnet or mainnet, we'll be just essentially naming, like adding the, like essentially assigning the proper names. The reason why that's going to be like that is the functions shall be untouched. All we have to change is the, the naming modules. So so then once the testnet is fully tested, we won't have to retest the same thing once we are going mainnet, because all we have to do is just rename, like literally just the interface type of rename, not the function type of rename, not the backend essentially type of rename. So that's looking pretty good. And whatever that decision is, if that's Casper, that's Casper. Okay, that was the poll that has been addressed. The other thing is, good morning, Federal. The other thing is the Ghost DAO notifications. So Ghost DAO notifications are live. You can check them out under the Ghost DAO thread. There are 4 types of notifications: when somebody's buying Fatso, when somebody is taking Fatso, when a new bond is created, and when somebody purchased a bond. So 2 bond notifications, 1 purchase notification, 1 stake notification. These notifications will be triggered automatically. For which chains That's a good question because at this point of time, it's going to be for Sepolia. Houthi may not be active. Why is that the case? Because despite $500 billion market capitalization, the state of the industry is very shitty. The RPC endpoints for Houthi are pretty much non-existent. They exist, but they don't exist, and they give us a specific error when we are trying to scrape data out of the events. So not out of the transactions, but out of the events. And that event data is needed in order to A, send notifications, and B, also organized as slow clap. That's the name of the entry bridge algorithm to be executed. So essentially, Houthi will have issues with notifications, and it may have issues with the bridge. Not because the bridge is faulty, it's just because Ethereum doesn't have apparently enough money to buy a fucking server. They probably, again, like that's also state of the industry of, despite us loving Ethereum, you know, the OGs, lots of OGs left the space altogether. They made the money left, or maybe they got disillusioned, whatever. And something is telling us that the AWS, which are the most expensive and overpriced servers on the planet, are being used because everybody is selling them very hard down everybody's throats. And of course, a server that could cost on Contabo $6 a month would fucking cost thousands of dollars on Amazon. And of course, most likely the foundation is using AWS servers. So that's why it's difficult to put a server because it actually is costly instead of going for a cheaper solution, which is also 99.999% uptime, etc., and way more customizable. In any case, that puts us in a pretty awkward yet interesting position. I would say interesting more than awkward, of selecting another testnet because Houthi may not be good to go. So the plan, therefore, is Sepolia will be relaunched. So we need to redeploy it anyways because of the bug. Plus, we need to add the Gatekeeper smart contract to it. So essentially, Ghost Dawn needs to be needs to be staking not just eGhost, which is in the treasury or in people's hands. Actually, no. Rather, let me just backtrack it. So eGhost, which is in staking smart contract, has to be earning the APY. That's a given. Similarly, eGhost, which is located on the DEX, will have to be staked as well. So that's a given. However, what we add is the Gatekeeper smart contract. So when somebody locks in Ghost in the smart contract, that Ghost needs to be also staked automatically while in the Gatekeeper smart contract. So that easy yet super important, super imperative nuance needs to be added to the smart contract, plus all the other bugs. So therefore, Sepolia will be redeployed. And then the question is, so the Houthi at that point of time will be somewhat outdated, right? Because it won't have the bridging capacity with the Gatekeeper. Plus, Houthi will just potentially be not even operational due to, well, in the nearest term, before they figure out the RPC endpoints. So we checked out Ethereum Classic with Morbid testnet, which is in the green on the screen that I'm sharing. Chiato, which is Gnosis mainnet, we checked that out as well. And these two actually quite operational from RPC standpoint perspective. And most of you guys haven't heard about them. So this is Ethereum Classic, this is Gnosis. Pulse, amazing as well. Amazing as well as far as RPC endpoints. And the market capitalization of Pulse is like $300 million, and the market capitalization of Ethereum is like $500 billion. And that's a huge fucking question what's really happening in this space. Like, is this space just going nuts altogether? I don't know. Linea has similar issues as Sepolia. Moreover, our contact people from Linea actually moved up to a different chain. It's an EVM chain for Ton, for Telegram. So it would be interesting to resume communication with the two contacts, both of them left Linea, and we have very, very good relationship with them. So we still have a relationship with Linea, but there could be a ton, like which is a Telegram native EVM blockchain project. I think it's called TAC, which may also be on the radar to be potentially placed amongst the testnets to be deployed on to replace, for example, Hudi. So we'll have to potentially organize a vote regarding like which chain to kind of move forward with. So Sipoli will be next, anyways, for the bridge. But then it would be nice to have another one as well. So a vote will probably happen maybe in a week, maybe in 2 weeks. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, that is as far as the testnets. And we also covered the names. So then what we can proceed with, if I covered everything, we can then proceed with a PowerPoint. Let me see. Boom. Yeah, so here, just, just updates as well. So we need to start thinking about the parameters. I'll show you some of them today, but we need to start thinking about which parameters to be added to the user interface for both, for all the Ghost DAOs, for the essentially multi-chain Ghost DAO. That's going to be the pinnacle of the summer outside of the educational component. On the educational component, by the way, there are, I think, 2 or 3 more articles to finalize the DEX, and then we're going to start Ghost DAO. So those 2 articles will include summary of formulas for the liquidity providers. It will be the well, obviously the DEX fees, how they're calculated, the first ever derivation of the DEX fees of the formula by Uniswap. There will be an article a little bit later, I'm not sure when, a little bit later, describing the error in the formula, how the formula is incorrect, slightly incorrect, or incorrect, whatever. There will be also an article about the practical application of the fees and the how the fees offset the impermanent loss. And like essentially the combination of these articles is going to be, the conclusion for the DEX specific articles. So in the DEX we had 2 sections. The first one was just DEX basics, and then the second one was how to calculate various ratios, various parameters, metrics, etc. as a liquidity provider. And then we're going to go over the Ghost DAO. And the Ghost DAO chapter or section is going to be huge, absolutely humongous. I think I have about 20 articles that I would like to publish. Let me find out the list. 1 second. Yeah, so we'll start with Olympus DAO, how it did in recent years, and we'll find out that Olympus DAO was actually holding quite well despite upsides or downsides in crypto. So it was actually quite involatile, so quite stable. Then we compare Olympus DAO versus Ghost DAO, right? So how Ghost DAO is an improvement on the Olympus DAO basics. Then we'll have an article about the bugs of Olympus that the dev team successfully fixed. And then we're going to go literally like eGhost. What's eGhost? Like the whole article will just be about eGhost. So how to calculate the total supply of eGhost, where the total supply is being minted, what's backed, what's not backed, how is it backed, then sGhost, what the hell is sGhost, how does it work, what is the circulating supply of sGhost, how is it calculated, etc. Then we're going to go into the Ghost token. Again, like totally new article as well. Like what the Ghost token is, what the price is, like if you're going to go multi-chain, how it's going to be calculated potentially. Then a separate article is going to be about GME Ghost. Then we're going to start talking about the treasury revenue sources, right? So how the treasury of each EVM earns revenue. So we're going to be discussing the bonds, we're going to be discussing the protocol-owned liquidity, essentially DEX fees, and then restaking. Then we're going to go through the bonds, right? So what type of bonds exist? So it's going to be DAI bonds, like LP bonds, eGhost DAI, LP bonds. Somebody suggested one of the whales, actually 2 of the whales suggested Ghost DAI, but not eGhost DAI, but also Ghost DAI bonds as well. And of course, we may have Ethereum bonds. So what are these different bonds? What do they mean? And then we're also going to start diving into a little bit of math on, well, actually a lot of math on kind of the metrics, right? Like of kind of the ratio optimization, like how each bond helps Treasury achieve its goals at the present time. Like what should be the discount on the bond? How much quantity of that bond shall be issued? Um, what yeah, like what capacity of the bond, right? Like essentially, how much, like what is the capacity that needs to be filled in order to get from ratio 1 to ratio 2, and what are these ratios? Uh, then, so we're going to go through the DAI bonds optimization metrics. Then we're going to go, like, that's a separate article. Then we're going to go through the LP bond, E goes by DAI. Then we're going to go through the LP goes DAI, like as far as ratio optimization metrics, like what are the formulas for these ratios, like how it's all calculated. Then again, we're going to go over E goes back in detail, describing RFV that you've seen on the screen, which is this 2.98 versus MV, which is going to be under the stake. You'll be able to find this under the stake button when you click that. Then we're going to go through the game theory. So the game theory is described quite well in the Goes DAI Light paper, but we're just probably going to essentially copy paste a lot of material, but also add some stuff like some explanation just to make it more bearable to read and more understandable to read. So the game theory of Olympus is 3,3, how that works. But then due to the decentralized bridge, we have a 4,4 game theory mechanics where the bridging significantly improves the payoff. And then since we are going cross-chain, the 4,4 is expandable to 7,7 by adding another network, and then 10,10 with 3 networks, and then 13,13 with 4 networks, and so on and so forth. So how the payout is significantly improved for the entire ecosystem as you adding more networks, and that's exactly the power of the network effect, right? So since the 4,4 is already optimizing the payout of the game theory matrix, if we add a lot more networks, the network effect shall take care of the downside and essentially significantly impact the upside, in theory, right? So again, that's a theoretical type of thing which did work for Olympus. And then we're going to talk about the impermanent loss, right? So when Treasury takes liquidity in the form of LP tokens, right? So the Treasury will then be subject to the downside due to impermanent loss. So how that, like, what's that distribution of allocation of upsides and downsides from impermanent loss and upsides from the DEX fees, and how to properly allocate the proper quantity of LP tokens into the Treasury. Then we're going to go into something that you guys never heard about, such as BCV. That's a bond control variable. So that's something from the code base, and how is that derived, and what does it mean? So I just described to you lots of topics on a piece of papers that I'm having these articles. I see at least 20 articles, but I just described to you, and it's probably going to be 30 or 40 different pieces describing stuff in detail. And again, the goal is to be the first project that really describes what the hell is happening. Because I think the biggest confusion is oftentimes not even from the users, but I think from the team members themselves. The overall problem that we're experiencing today in the world, and that's not applicable just to Web3, although Web3 is a screaming problem, is we lost, I think I mentioned this on one of the previous calls, we completely lost the purpose. Like, we don't know what the fuck we're doing. Like, we have no idea what we're doing, right? So which leads to corrupt governments, which leads to irresponsible management, board of directors, and so on and so forth. Like, everybody is just going for the money. Like, oh, the money will like magically save somebody. But consumerism, and of course the consumerism is partially, and maybe not partially, maybe that's the biggest source of the Keynesian economics, which has been essentially lobbied through majority of the central banks in the world, and the only savior for the Keynesian economics is consumers. Consume, and we have to consume, therefore. So we don't want to be rich, we just want to be consumers. We just want to consume, like, through the like we just want to be the best consumers. Like when you look at the social media is one consumer comparing himself or herself to another consumer. That's the fucking essence. And we can say that it goes back to to us becoming having the inherent need of being part of the tribe. And when I'm getting the likes and the retweets, it's the people telling me yes, they approve me, so like I'm becoming this part of the tribe, and that's our inherent need. And that's true. But what's also true is they trained us. Like every single more and more countries, like 20 years ago, many emerging countries didn't care about anything as far as social media. They were just trying to to get by. But now today, with the distribution of social media, literally everybody is emulating and catching up with what the West has been doing before. So the concept today is the mindset, the purpose, the ideology is to be a consumer, and because that really literally helps the economy, right? So, and that is actively lobbied everywhere. And because of that, we having what we're having. We're having shitty products, shitty services, irresponsibility, corruption, etc. Which leads to half measures. Like nobody really wants to change the world because everybody, like at the end of the day, you just want to consume. So you essentially, even if you kind of like say that you want to be changing the world, you then will get access to the resources that will then be still reinvested back into the economy. So you can keep being a consumer, right? So it's like, it's this vicious circle. And what we need to break out of the circle completely is to build a new, like a new financial, ecosystem, right? Like it has to be very detached from what we are having. And arguably, there are some ecosystems that do exist today, and that's not just in Web3. So obviously, we're talking about Bitcoin. Obviously, we're talking about Monero, even Ethereum, right? So Uniswap to some extent, definitely before they upgraded to Ethereum v4, like absolutely was part of that independent ecosystem. But then we also have interesting peer-to-peer protocols. Some of them I cannot name on camera. I shouldn't, but the likes of Torrent in particular, which is not really monetizing themselves much, but is a screaming voice for for the freedom. Same thing with Mozilla, Firefox browser. Same thing to some extent with Linux operating system. There are a bunch of tools, and when you are tracking that, although it's very difficult to find that stats, when you're tracking the usage, it seems like the usage is actually growing year over year higher than kind of the corporate savvy, the corporate friendly type of solutions, such as aka Windows, right? So like when you look at Windows versus Linux, I think I mentioned this like quite some time ago. While Windows is still a monopoly, like the majority of users still on Windows, but the number of Linux users in 10 or 20 years like 10x. So more and more users switching to Linux, and corporations also switching to Linux. Like when you're trying to find a server, obviously the servers will be for the most part Linux based. So Linux is also going mainstream, like meaning lots of solutions such as Forbidden or Not, say Pirate Bay, again Forbidden or Not Torrent, and some browsers, right? So like they are becoming more and more mainstream from perspective of actual adoption. Spoke to one of the whales. He said very interesting. He found a very interesting thing, specifically when it comes down to Monero, and that's for all of us to think about. So while we have Sui, screaming everywhere, "Hey, Sui, fucking this and that," like, the best network in the world, 1 million TPS per millisecond, whatever the hell they're selling, right? And then we have, I don't know, Solana. Oh, Solana will change the world. All the freaking institutions will go to Solana, and real world assets will move to Solana. And then we're going to go, you guys forgot, Algorand was a huge one. Near protocol, oh my goodness, that have to change the world. Like all of them have to fucking change the world. And what's interesting is happening is the louder they scream, the less adoption they have. So that screaming on social media is just to appear to be big and kind of having some type of usage, some type of product market fit, but having none. And then conversely, Monero doesn't have much social media presence, but my gosh, how much adoption it has. Yes, it's a privacy angle. I'm not here to judge what type of people using the service. And frankly speaking, I don't care. It's not my business. But there's real adoption, actual adoption. And you can argue that, okay, like maybe let's assume that some bad people are using it. But like define bad, like, I mean, there's some very immoral events, typically that break in the, the 10 Amendments, right? In Christianity and something similar in Islam and Judaism tradition, right? But outside of that, such as killing or stealing, lots of things are called unethical or immoral by the same politicians who A, do the same things, and B, those unethical and immoral things are not unethical, not immoral. It's just kind of man-made type of laws that have nothing to do with religion and thus ethics, and just man-made stuff just to keep controlling us under whatever excuses, such as traceability of the funds. Like, why would you care about how much money and where, what money, whom do I transfer the money to? The explanation is, well, you can finance some bad groups, etc. Okay, but it's like essentially trace the money, and that's how you could be tracing the bad people. Okay, so how about we start tracing fucking politicians? How come that stuff is not transparent? How come that is like not the the status quo of like, okay, we'll start with the governing body, right? So it's like nobody talks about it, right? So it's all bullshit. So therefore, kind of, again, good people, bad people, I don't know, but Monero does have real adoption despite sufficiently quiet social media presence, right? So that is very interesting. So those who have nothing will be appearing to be big, and those who have a lot, will actually try to appear as quiet as possible. I think Peter Thiel actually was he who said that, says the same thing about monopolies. Like his example was Google, right? So Google is an actual monopoly on search. So they're trying to say that they're not big, because if they start screaming that they're big, because they are, the risk is that they will actually be split into multiple companies, and conversely, the small companies who don't really have enough market share, they'll be screaming how they're super big, just to appear big, just to get that market share. So that's like similar behavior is observed on the marketing front of many blockchain networks. So same thing with, well, Bitcoin is kind of flawed, but I think Zcash is also having some pretty interesting adoption, and nobody really remembers Zcash anymore. Well, I think it actually does have this usage. So I think the same thing applies to Dash to some extent. And frankly speaking, SushiSwap and Uniswap, like people say, oh, Uni, but SushiSwap is also pretty big. They traded, I think, $250 billion worth of trades in the last, like since the launch in the last 5 years ago, which is quite massive. And nobody really talks about Sushi, although it's there. People talk about Coinbase and Bybit, but nobody talks about SushiSwap. Okay, so that's that. I think I forgot to mention one thing about the faucets. Let me just go back to the internet screen, if I may. So here, so compliments to the team. So these faucets are slowly being added, including the Tron faucet, including Solana. I think they'll be announced very soon. They're just to test the waters, just to see what's up. So an interesting thing happened. We wrote to Tron. So I thought Tron had 8,000 nodes, etc., whatever, and they do. But as far as actual validators, it seems like it's 27 validators, and I think we have 34, 35 validators today on the testnet. So we have more validators on the testnet than Tron has on the mainnet, which is quite interesting. And we reached out to Tron just to see if we can get some type of co-marketing opportunities, etc. I think we reached to the Tron DAO, and we got zero response. Literally zero fucking response. So that's the same objective, is to try to reach out to Solana and potentially Sui. We don't like these protocols, but just out of interest, out of curiosity, just to test the waters and see like is there actual usage outside of all this marketing PR bullshit that that they invest millions of dollars into, of investors' money into. But some of these faucets are searchable, and we on the first page. I think Ethereum Classic. When I was trying to find Ethereum Classic faucet myself, I think Ghost was on the first page. I was just trying to find the right one. Same thing applies, I think, to Hoodie. At least that was my search. So please do the searches, see how it is. Try to help make these faucets more adaptive, right? So let me show the statistics on those. 1 second. Let me show the statistics on these faucets so far. Yeah, I know that we need to make the proposals already, but we are just too busy with everything else. Like, just don't have time for anything really. So on the faucet side, that is the cumulative requests. I think we're achieving roughly 20 to 30 requests per day, every day, which is quite impressive, like absolutely impressive. And what's going to happen is when we're going to be redeploying Sepolia on the Ghost DAO, lots of you guys gave your Sepolia ETH. So what we're going to do is we will be able to, we'll do a manual swap back. So you'll probably need to sell your fat cells. Don't sell them today, but like you'll need to sell them on the old UI, converted, and then we'll manually convert it back to GDAI. So essentially, because, based on some formula. So it's going to be like a pretty manual process at first, but then for going forward for all the testnets, we'll also, like you have a forward swap from Ethereum to GDAI, we'll also add a backward swap from GDAI back to Ethereum. And it's going to be some type of fee. And the difference, that fee will be funding the faucets. So to our massive surprise, we got almost 600 Ethereum on the Ghost DAO and Sepolia, which is like completely unbelievable. Thank you so much for your support and for your activity and engagement. So I think we'll put a commission of roughly 20%. So 100 ETH we'll essentially take from the community. Hope that's okay. And that 100 Ethereum will go to fund the faucet. So that it's going to be at 0.01 ETH per request. That's going to be enough for 10,000 requests. So far, I think we reached 2,000 requests since the launch across all faucets, which is quite nice. So the 10,000 will last for some time. And then, of course, once you get your Ethereum back, you can then kind of reinvest into the updated Sepolia testnet Ghost DAO, and then we'll be also taking 20% of that. So again, the whole point is not to kind of rob you guys of the 20% of your Sepolia ETH, but more to fund the faucets. And of course, as I mentioned again before, we need to make a decision which testnet to go on after Sepolia. And to be honest, something is telling me it has to be Pulse. I was between Linea and Pulse because Linea, we have such good relationships with the chain. But since the two contacts that we like really created almost friendship type of relationships, they both left. It seems like Pulse is going to be a better option. Again, I'm just like speculating. I'm just thinking out loud. Both, I mean, all of these testnets are good to go. But think about the testnet chains that you do have connections with, relationships with, some marketing promotion with, etc. We know it seems like Pulse does have some type of angle like that, so Pulse could be a good one. And yeah, maybe we redeploy Sepolia and just go Pulse directly. So that's the thinking process. So what else I want to cover? I'm actually, oh yeah. So the reason why, again, just like to reiterate, the reason why Hoodie may be not a good chain for the bridge for now. They will fix it because Hoodie is an upcoming testnet, so they'll fix it, but it's not fixed as of today. So they only have 2 RPC endpoints, and they again actively block the event extraction, and we need we need information from the events for both the notifications and also for the bridge. For the bridge from the EVM to Ghost, and also backwards, but for now for the entry bridge. So therefore, Hoodie may not be functional for our purposes. And I think the last thing for the day. So if you have any questions, maybe you should start asking them now. Last thing for the day is, let me see. Yeah. So this is just I'm not sure if I shared that before. So this is just a quick uh, kind of parameters and metrics that this support, this hoodie, this something cumulative, just like some mere introductory attempts to figure out the cumulative type of measures based on the Sepolia and hoodie at this point of time. So as we have more chains, more testnets being added, the cumulative um, parameters will be expanding as far as like which metrics to track. So far, what makes sense to track is the average price of eGhost, total supply, some type of average APY, which is not applicable right now because Sepolia doesn't have an APY. It's a bug. Index probably doesn't make any sense to do. So is K. But say RRFV, which is the risk-free value, which is essentially like we should do the cumulative of that. So we should have a total of, total quantity of DAI backing up the treasury and also total quantity of LP tokens, total value of LP tokens back in the treasury. So like these parameters are quite needed. So for example, the market value, the cumulative market value as of 2 weeks ago was $4 billion. Today is higher. $4 billion. 4 million. $4 million with an M. $4 million. And the total backend with the 4 million, the total backend market value of backend was 3.2 million, which is quite right. So we're looking at 3.8 market capitalization compared to 3.2 of the actual backing, which is like so close. So the premium is nothing, and that's the type of scenarios that we should be potentially looking at. So we should also look at the maybe market cap to market value type of coefficients. We should be looking at market cap to RFE type of coefficients. So all of these things need to be traced, and it would be nice if you guys could start introducing some ideas, some concepts of what could be added, because this UI looks way too complicated, and we know that, and we'll need to add more and more parameters and then oversimplify it. When it comes down to the chart, let me just scroll here. Yeah, so these again just like some initial steps at the charts. Let me just put it here like this. Yeah. So here, the goal supply, and then the RFE versus market value, and then the market cap allocation, and the MB to market cap. So these are some parameters and ratios and charts at this point of time, just in Excel, and they'll be in Excel for quite some time, for the whole summer at least, because we need, before we start coding something, we need to know what to code so we don't have to recode. So the best time to start throwing in feedback is today regarding what may be added. So I think that's all I wanted to cover. It's actually a lot of things happening. Notifications are here, FOSS is being added nonstop, stuff like that. So if you have any questions, please let us know in the whales. If not, let's pause. We didn't have that many people watching us today. So watch the recording if you missed something. And I'll see you next week. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye-bye.